We are live. Harun abi, we are live.
Okay, Assalamualaikum everyone. I wish everyone good day, nice afternoon, nice evening time, depending on the time zone. I will be moderating this treatise, the 24th letter, which is really, as other treatises, which is very important and at the core of questioning how all these changes, transformations that we encounter or observe in the universe, cosmos, happen, and how can we just devise some meaning out of these transformations. So it's a deep questioning, and I hope we make the best benefit out of it. Our speakers will be Colin Turner from UK, and Mustafa from Saudi Arabia, Altunkaya Mustafa, if I don't remember wrongly, just depending on my memory, from Saudi Arabia, and excellent speakers. And of course, we are waiting for your contributions. If you're willing to, you can just write into chat questions or comments, or you can just chime in and speak out to share your comments or questions. To begin with, we can just start reading a little bit and then question. But maybe I like the most, from the beginning to convey, what is understood, or what I understand overall from this treatise, so that we can have a big picture. I don't know how detailed we can go, but otherwise, this will be again about questioning all the transformations happening, changes happening, all these vast activities happening inside the universe, and how it relates to the compassion, mercy, and love of the Creator, love of Allah. Because we know this type of changes require death in the first place, require separation. And death and separation are awful at the face value. So how can we relate all these changes to a merciful Creator shortly? And this is a bold question, obviously, and Said Nursi doesn't shy away from bold questions. And in a way, we're going to just see his struggle to understand this. And I think it's a subtle message to us to question as believers, as bold questions to the creation and what's happening to strengthen our belief in the first place. That's my overall comment for this treatise. So to start, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Yef'alullah ma yasha'u ve yahkumu ma yurid. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, God does what he wishes and decrees what he wills. Question: how can the solicitous nurturing, the purposeful and beneficial planning, the loving kindness of the names of all compassionate, all wise, and loving, which are among the greatest of divine names, be reconciled with death and non-existence, decline and separation, and disaster and hardship, which are awesome and terrible? Very well, man goes to eternal happiness, so we can tolerate his passing down the road of death. But how about the delicate species of trees, plants, and the lovely flowers, which are all living creatures, and the animal species, which are worthy of existence, lovers of life, and desire permanent life? What compassion and kindness are there in their continuously without exception being annihilated, in their being swiftly dispatched to non-existence without being allowed so much as open their eyes? in their being made to toil without so much as taking a breath, in their being changed by calamities, with not one of them being left in peace, in their being killed without exception, in their dying, with not one of them remaining, in their departing, with none of them being gratified. What wisdom and purpose, what favor and mercy are there in this? I think it's a good time to stop, and I want to turn to my speakers. Colin Hocam, are you here?
Salam alaikum. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
but,
great to hear your voice.
You can ask me second if you don't mind.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks.
Mustafa, can we take you first to open this question and maybe share your initial thoughts about this treatise in the first place, and elaborate this question to us.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you very much, Harun Abi. Yeah, it's a very deep question. Even last year, I think it was one of my friends who was Christian. He asked me the same question. It was a long discussion, and also, the answer as Ustad is going to give, inshallah, in the coming pages. But what I understood from the question is, Allah is all compassionate, all wise, all loving, and He doesn't want kind of any difficulties in a way, or like making the creation, and a separation, disaster, and hardship. So how can be aligned like with His names, and all of these disasters and the terrible things happen to the creation? And one thing is, I think he's also saying that, let's say for human being, we can understand that this is a temporary place. They are going to a better location, inshallah, in paradise. But for example, for little, let's say, insects, or innocent animals, why this is happening to them? I mean, what is their intake or benefit or purpose of it? So I think it's a deep question with maybe multi-layer answers on it. But this is what I understood in general from the question, Harun Abi.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Mustafa. And is this legitimate? Do we question like this these days, or do we shy away, or we have maybe deeper questions, but we cannot maybe bring it to our words or writings? What do you think? Mustafa?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, also like when I was talking with my friend in this sense, like how come all of these beauties, animals, and I mean, is it like a wasting of the resources, or wasting like a lot of things we see around? So it was like heartbreaking from what understood from his side. And similarly, when I thought about it, yeah, I mean, so many things is being created, and some of the things like within few days it survives and then dies. So how can be like a happiness or enjoyment or with all of these scenes we are seeing? I don't know if I correctly rephrase it, but
yeah, very nice.
Yeah, and like trees, plants, beautiful flowers, butterfly, like you see them, and then when you learn that within 7 days some of them they disappear, it's a heartbreaking, like for someone who has a sensitive heart, even like you start, you can cry, but we may not maybe feel in that level or sense. But I think inshallah with deep thinking and tafakkur, we might a little bit dive in more.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think even if we talk more, it will not be just enough to dig into this. Colin Hocam, if you are ready, we can.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Great.
Alaikum. I think this is a really interesting opening. The 24th letter, it opens with a question straight away. There's no long introduction, or there's no declamation at the beginning. Of course, there's a verse, but he comes straight into the question, and I actually think that the author is sort of playing devil's advocate, really. He's putting himself maybe in his position as a younger man, maybe when he had certain sensitivities that were later possibly sort of tempered by strong belief, and maybe he wasn't later so sensitive. But I also think he's putting himself in the position of those who just don't get it, and understandably, they just don't understand why in a world which is so patently and obviously beautiful and wonderful and makes us want to stay forever, why is there so much death and disaster? Why is there so much illness? And, I think he's to a certain extent playing devil's advocate, because he's talking about death and non-existence. Actually, there's no such thing, we know, as non-existence. And we know that there is dying, but there is no such thing as death, in a sense. And, for believers, there's no actual real decline. There's no real separation. There are hardships, of course, there are trials and tribulations, but that's a slightly different issue. He says, awesome and terrible. I think that he's putting words into the mouth of those who look at the creation and they just can't understand. How can there be a God who can create all of this, and yet there's so much destruction, death and destruction on an industrial scale?
Right.
It's very difficult. And okay, he says here that man goes to eternal happiness, etc., so we can tolerate it. But what about the poor animals? What about the poor plants? And I've heard lots of people say this, they have such, and it's a good sign, people have such sensitivity, especially vegetarians, for example, who they don't eat because they think it's cruelty to animals. To eat animals, and they don't realize that as they tread insects underfoot without realizing it, they are in a sense doing exactly what they abhor. So I think he's looking at it from another perspective, and at the same time he's answering our own doubts. If we have any kind of residual doubts as believers as to why these things are happening, he can answer us as well. So I think he's really being very, very astute and very clever with the question.
Yeah, Hocam, thank you very much. Also, this treatise affects me in a way that he doesn't stop questioning. I mean, Said Nursi's, continuous questioning until he feels content or satisfied. I think isn't it a good example for us, like never stop questioning to the level that you really feel satisfied, or once your questions are answered, it might change. As we will see, he says one answer is tolerating for a year, but after a year, he's not satisfied with the answer, he's questioning deeper. So I think this dynamism...
You're right. There's a dynamism in belief, the objects of belief obviously don't change. But the gradations of belief, or the gradations of our our being sure, our yaqeen, that changes. It can change from morning to evening. You can be meditative and accepting and understanding, and you think you've understood something, and then something can happen and it just skews everything. So he constantly asks, he constantly questions, he's constantly questioning the creation, questioning himself. And this is what we're supposed to do, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu billah. Those who believe in Allah. Well, you may say, well, I already believe. Well, no, what he means is you must carry on questioning. You must carry on reading the signs. You don't stop reading the signs just because you've said, Amintu billah. And he's a very good example of this.
Yeah, wonderful. And I see there's a meta text, isn't it? We are reading this text, but obviously we see how Said Nursi attaches to Quran. Like he starts with the verse, with most of the treatises, including this one, but also from these verses, he's pulling out, let's say, the relevant parts of the verses, which is here, I would say, the names Hakim, Vedud, and Rahim. He's selecting these three names, most likely from the Quran, what I understand, and he's using all the context maybe in his mind map to be able to answer these deep questions. I mean, this iman, his attachment to Quran, the level of attachment, I think it's amazing. It's a very, very, very nice example to say.
Yeah, it's his criterion. It's his kind of sat-nav, which helps him to navigate existence, really. And you know, what a criterion to have. And as you said, you rightly pointed out, he doesn't choose divine names just on a whim. He chooses them in a very measured way, in a very intentional way. And you can probably tell from the names that he uses how he's going to be arguing later on in the text.
Yeah, great. Mustafa, are you back? If you want to add something on this paragraph, we can listen to you. Otherwise, maybe we can move on.
Yes, I'm back, but yeah, I don't have anything to add right now.
Great, then we can move on. And please, everyone, feel free to add comments, ask questions. I think this being together, you know, adds a lot of value to this conversation. The answer: through 5 signs which show the necessitating cause and reason, and 5 indications which point out the aims and benefits, we shall try to look from afar at the mighty truth that solves this question and is extremely broad, profound, and elevated. First station. This consists of 5 signs. First sign, as is described at the end of the 26th word, Kader Risalesi, when making a precious garment ornamented with jewels and embroidery, a skillful craftsman employs a poor man in return for a commensurate wage. In order to display his skill and art, he dresses the man in the garment, then measures and cuts it, then lengthens and shortens it. Making the man sit down and stand up, he gives it various forms. Does the wretched man have the right to say to the craftsman, "Why are you meddling with this garment, which makes me beautiful, altering and changing it? Why are you making me stand up and sit down, disturbing me and causing me trouble?" In exactly the same way, in order to display the perfections of his art through the embroideries of his names, the all-glorious maker takes the essential nature of beings as a model. Then he clothes them all, especially living creatures, in the garment of a body bejeweled with senses, and inscribes it with the pen of divine decree and determining, thus displaying the manifestation of his names. In addition, he gives to each of them a perfection, a pleasure, and effulgence in a way suitable to it and as a wage. Does anything have the right then to say to the all-glorious maker, who exemplifies the meaning of Malikul Mulk yetasarrufu fi mulkihi kayfe yasha, the Lord of all dominion has free disposal over his realms as he wishes? You are giving me trouble and disturbing me. God forbid. I think I'm going to stop here and maybe get back to Colin Hocam, this example of this craftsman and the model is famous, and it is referred to Risale-i Nur 26th word. Can you elaborate on this example? I think it gets a little bit abstract, like when he draws attention to what the realities of this story, of this analogy mean. It gets a little bit more abstract, but how do you understand this?
I think it's about entitlement, and also about hierarchy, in a sense. The whole thing. He's going to be talking about the great chain of being. We know that the creation is hierarchical. You know, this is a very, very old idea, and it exists in all of the great traditions. There is a hierarchy, and everything has its place. And unfortunately, we have lost that tradition, because now we want equity. We want everyone to be equal in outcome, not just equal opportunity, but equal in outcome. And I think what Ustad says, and I actually rebelled against the idea when I first read it. I thought it was terrible many, many years ago. And for a long time, it annoyed me. These examples annoyed me as well. But now I see it's absolutely spot on. He's talking about a tailor making a suit of clothes, maybe, and he employs, well, usually they do it on a tailor's dummy, which is an inanimate object. But sometimes, in order to fit it properly, they use models, human models. And he's talking here about the tailor has employed a poor man, and he's paying him probably more than he would normally earn in order to stand there and wear the clothes, while the tailor alters the clothes. He hires the hem, he takes things in at the shoulder, he makes it fit properly. And of course, the model, who should know what he's in for, who should realize, has to stand up and sit down. He has to take off his jacket, put the jacket back on, do up the buttons, undo the zip, put on the trousers, lift his leg so that the tailor can, cut the hem, turn around, walk to the mirror, walk back. All of these things he has to do, because the tailor is making a suit of clothes, and the model should realize this is the job that he's been given. This is his livelihood even. Now, why would the model turn around to the tailor and say, "Why are you making me stand up and sit down? Why are you telling me to walk across to the mirror? And why are you telling me to take my jacket off and to do the buttons up, and now put my collar like this and collar like, why are you bothering me like this?" That would be crazy. That would be absolutely crazy if, this model who is getting a wage from the tailor, has been employed by the tailor. He's not unemployed. He's getting a wage in return for what he's doing. Why would he turn around and say, "Why are you bothering me with all this nonsense?" Of course, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't have the right to do that. So I think that's the analogy. I think what Ustad is saying here is, no one has the right to question, under those circumstances, "Why are you doing this to me?" The tailor and the model have a contract with each other. So unless the model wants to lose his job, he wouldn't question the integrity of the tailor. I think this is what he's saying.
Thank you very much, Hocam, for elaboration. What about the truths behind these analogies? Like here, isn't it interesting? He says, the model corresponds to the essential nature of beings. I think this is at a very decent level of abstraction. It doesn't just say, it's me as a human being. It's more abstract. He says it's the essential nature of any being. So
yes, yeah, I think that's a good point. And when it gets back to the issue of equity, we will see that an ant is not treated in the same way as a lion, and a lion is not treated in the same way as a human being, because the essential natures are different. And I think this is something that we've forgotten on the social level as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, and also if we think in the opposite way, if we treat equally, let's say, or expect treating equally, isn't it to the contrary of the nature of beings? That means actually it will be torture or unjust
It
to
will
a
be
lion in
unjust,
your
yeah.
example to treat, in a way to treat to a sheep, let's say.
It will be unjust. I remember years ago at a conference, I gave an example of my daughter. We were in Turkey with with our 3 children, and the 2 boys were old, like 8 and 10, and my daughter was just 2 or 3. And she was complaining that why is my plate not as full as my brother's?
Yes.
So it was difficult to explain that, they're much older. They run around, they use their energy. You're not as energetic as they are. You're smaller, your stomach is smaller. You can't explain that to a child. But if we give her the same amount, it's too much for her. If we give them a smaller amount, it's too little for them. So, the essential nature of them as 3 children of different sizes and heights is such that they have to be treated differently. Unfortunately, this is something that has carried across as a result of socialism and communism and all of the sort of leftist aspirations of absolute equality and equity. And I think there's a kind of atmosphere of that in the second part of this treatise, because he says later on, I don't treat everything different. I don't treat everything the same, because they're not the same. And this is something that I think we forget at our peril. It causes a lot of problems.
And this is amazing. I think also these differences will be related to manifestations of Esma-il Husna. Allah's qualities, Esma-il Husna attributes, necessitates creatures or created beings to be different. I think he ontologically connects everything to, again, manifestations of Esma-il Husna. And that makes the nature of beings different, and also which by this, let's say, by this construct, it requires, manifestations of this different Esma-il Husna, or different proportions of reflections to understand. I think we will get to this as we move on. Mustafa, do you want to add to this part? Maybe also the second part, like he clothes them, especially living creatures, in the garment of body bejeweled with senses. So we all just wear this type of garments, and also the other parts. If you can elaborate on this analogy, I mean, what it refers to, that would be awesome.
Yeah, just to the point you just said, the essence, the mahiyat of the creation is the critical point. This is also what I see. Allah is giving our Creator everything, like as the dress or cloth. This doesn't belong to us. Sometimes when we want to say why this is happening, why it's disturbing us, as if like it's our own property, but it's not our own property. So as in the example you start mentioning here, is we get paid, for this dress. It's been given, and then to make shortening or making elongation, it is to bring like a perfection for the final patterns. Or as you said, also the names of Allah, Jamal and Kamal, to be manifested, we have to, be patient and then see the final results, because we are in a rush and we don't see the future, and then we don't see the beauty at that point. So actually, it will be manifested, the joy for us, actually a greater maybe benefit. But unfortunately, in our short-sighted views, we cannot have that understanding in early stages. So I think when we look at all these senses which Allah is giving to human being, we want to understand also the shu'unat of Allah. So, but if you can get maybe sometimes, different feelings, which we cannot sometimes describe it well, this is, I think, giving us a better understanding of our Creator. So to know Him more, and then, appreciate it, what we have been given also. But I think here is for the manifestation of His names, the more we see it like kind of Allah is cutting this one, doing a separation, but it is also a reflection of His eternal ever living, because we are the created, we are the creation. We should feel this death, like every nafs, every soul is gonna feel the death. This way is also there is an aspect of one of the manifestation of His name. So I think that was what it came to me and related with this example.
Great. And also, don't you think, Mustafa, in this craftsman example, cutting this garment, it's a very nice matching. I mean, it's our senses, right? I mean, whatever happens, we feel something. So it likes we are as a model cut through our senses, or we can say our senses are cut. So I feel pain, I feel emotional, I feel overwhelmed, these are all senses. And whatever happens around, it's my senses being played out. So because of this senses, actually, I feel like my garment is, tailored in a way.
Yeah. I think like I saw a video about gardening, and one of the gardeners, he was just in front of a tree, the beautiful tree with like long branches. He said, I'm going to cut this one and I will show you how it will be after 3-4 months. And then he recorded also the points where he cut it many pieces. And then after 3-4 months, how it was, how it became. So it was like heartbreaking because it has so many branches. He cut it almost everything, and he makes it like a bare trunk. And then when the spring comes, this was happening around February. And then when spring comes, it gives new shrouds, new openings, and plenty of fruits. And then he was saying that this is good for this tree to be a healthy, because sometimes he's removing a infectious bacteria location, or to make it, let's say, the central area much bigger and much stronger. The little ones around it he's cutting so that the nurturing can be better. So, I mean, for that reasons, like the tree who has an arm, like a branch, his senses is being cutted. So we feel like sorry. But when you see it like after 4 months, you will say that, thanks Allah, it's being cut, and now he's much better, much fruitful. And then this is the perfect shape of this tree, the way it's being designed, because they had an idea, the gardener, if I cut it here and here, it's gonna be making like this shape, U-shape growth. It will not go to, let's say, to neighboring neighbor's garden. Okay, if I cut it like this, it will give the fruits right hopefully here. So this way you feel it like the master plan behind it, and then you say, oh, there is a great pleasure, this is good, right?
Yeah, very great example, this cutting branch of the tree as, cutting our senses. And looks like once we are disturbed with playing with our senses in a way, we then understand that it was a necessary feeling at the time that just nurtures me, makes me more matured, or my life is manifested in this fashion. That's pretty much looks like. And also the last part of the analogy to reality, it's just using the inscription of pen of divine decree and determining. So what plays out here is kaza and kader, right? Divine decree and determining. Also, this is a very abstract expression, which I think includes many, many things. Do you want to talk about this kaza kader pen that requires, playing with my senses, which in the end, just realizes the creation to my understanding? Colin Hocam, do you want to say something on this point?
I think qadar is quite complex, and I think it would be a bit of a digression, but going back to the use of the word bejeweled, and that's an interesting word that is used, because of course the senses are the conduits through which we understand the divine names. Our inner senses and our outer senses are like the antennas that we have, which pick up and receive the imprints and the impresses of the divine names. And as Mustafa was just saying, with cutting the trees, which is always, it's not a very nice job, because you've watched the tree grow throughout the summer, and we have to do it to the fruit trees here. We have to cut them back, when they've given the fruit, and it's always, it feels like you're cutting a friend. A little bit, but that's their qadar, and this tree has to be treated in this way, and another tree has to be treated another way. This tree gives fruit only after the first frost in autumn, and the other tree doesn't. So each one has its own, first of all, he says, essential nature, and also they have their own divine decree and determining, which it determines their lifespan, basically, and what's going to happen to them and what should happen to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very nice meanings. Oh, well, so maybe we can talk about this a little bit. In addition, he gives to each of them a perfection, a pleasure, and effulgence in a way suitable to it, and as a wage. Also, I think this argument is used a lot in this treatise, connecting this, transformation in the cosmos, connecting this to our feelings and connecting our feelings to perfection, and also just perceiving this as a wage. Can we discuss this a little bit? Because I felt like here there's a very good point, like as a believer, we should also maybe take an action in a way that we feel satisfied, we feel pleasure. But I know the word pleasure also has a negative impact on us, like we shouldn't have pleasure, right, in a way. But to discuss,
I disagree about that.
Yeah, I just want to bring this,
Yeah. I mean, there is pleasure, there is also divine pleasure, there is godly pleasure as well, and it's a pure pleasure. I think pleasure for the sake of pleasure. Eating is a good example, because we eat because we need food, and we need food because without it, our sustenance, without sustenance, the continuation of our existence will be compromised, will be threatened. So it's fuel. So you could look at it as some people do and say that I eat only to live, where others say I live to eat, and they're two extremes. We shouldn't live just in order to eat. And if you see, it's probably the same in America as it is here. So many programs on TV about cooking and food is kind of fetishized and idolized, because food is an idol, for many. And the other extreme is people who say, I'm only going to eat what is absolutely necessary to keep me alive. And I think that again is an extreme. We have to go the middle way and not make israf. Eat and drink of the good things, tayyibat. And I don't think that's just food, you can eat and drink in an abstract sense, of the good things that Allah has given us, beautiful sounds, beautiful sights, edifying reading, good companions, you can eat and drink all of these things. But if you do it to excess and you do it for its own sake, then it becomes very, very, ismi and nafsani, just for the sake of personal, and it's not even pleasure then, it's a kind of lust, a kind of greed. And but there's nothing wrong in taking pleasure in nice things. In the Prophet ﷺ is said to have liked, for example, perfume. He liked really good smells. And that is one of the great pleasures. And it's very interesting because I asked someone the other day, which divine name covers scent and perfume and smelling? And he said, actually, it's a kind of taste. Now, I don't know. I'm not a biologist. But I do know that the smell and the taste, they're all connected. So I don't know, but there must be a divine name which covers the most beautiful smells and scents and perfumes that exist out there, and we should take pleasure in them.
I think this is a very important point, Colin Hocam, Mustafa, to elaborate upon. I feel like Muslim world is missing this. And I want to take the example of our professions, our careers, whatsoever. I see most of the well-established company CEOs agree that you should pursue, or academics even, you should pursue a profession which you'll really fall in love with. You should love your job. You should love what you're doing. And I think this advice is just to the point. I mean, because it is very ontological. If I find a profession that I love doing, it kind of takes me to the level of having this pleasure mentioned here that brings perfection together. And that's very ontological in a sense that, it is connected to manifestations of Esmail Husna. The other way around, if I cannot find this, or if I just, deprive from this vision, it looks like I will not have as much pleasure. I will not have as much perfection. That will be on the contrary of the essential nature of being as a model. What do you think about that?
I think that's brilliant. I really do. And Mustafa will have a view as well, obviously, because we all do things, hopefully, that we enjoy doing. And if we do things just for the money, then people do things just for the money, just for the very, very high salary, and they suffer. They get blood pressure. They don't really enjoy it. They have to work very, very hard. If you can find a job or a vocation in life that suits your temperament and is not haram, obviously, it suits your temperament and it's beneficial maybe to society, and it doesn't, even if it doesn't pay very well, as long as it's making you satisfied and giving you that perfection, pleasure, and effulgence and some kind of wage, then why not?
Isn't it? Maybe I find this, I mean, I wish I can, convey this to my children or all children in the first place. I felt like this is like a manifesto of living, in this world. In a way.
I think it is. I mean, obviously, you have to mix this with what he says about qanaat, about living frugally and economically. We have to see it from multi perspectives. But taking illicit pleasure. Taking illicit pleasure. محمد وسط درسم و بعدم به زنگ میزنم، ببخشید وسط زومم، قربانت. Sorry, I thought I'd turn my phone off.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah. We heard your Persian as well.
So yes, I mean, as long as it's licit, this pleasure, then why not? I think, yeah, as you said, we as Muslims think that we shouldn't be taking pleasure in things because maybe there's something wrong with it. Well, and of course there's not. If it goes to the extreme, then yes, but why not?
Yeah, Mustafa, do you want to say on this?
I want to elaborate with one example. Recently, we have it in our workplace. As you said, like, you know, as human being, we get pleasure when we go perfection with the profession we enjoy. Like Allah is giving us a lot of capabilities. Some of us will be engineers, some of us maybe, psychologists, and many other branches of the field. To understand the names of Allah also, because all of these professions is linked with one of the names of Allah. So one of our colleague, his area is chemistry. He was very passionate about research, but he doesn't have a PhD, like, in his field. But he was always trying to get something within the university we are in. But for some reason, it didn't work well here where we are in the Saudi. But 3 years ago, he found a way to do his PhD long distance in France, Paris, in Sorbonne University. And then what happened is, I think he has like a pleasure on studying the subject. He has worked a lot with experimental part, writing articles, going back and forward from distance, from here to Europe, and many struggle. I mean, we have seen him depressed, feeling sorry, a separation from his family for a while to do his works. But with all of these things Allah decreed, with the pen of divine decree, he's going to be a reflection of the name of Alim, because Allah is all-knowing. But if you know much better than the other people in the chemistry, like an alim or scholar of a chemistry, so he's been going on that path, but with a lot of, let's say, struggles and the efforts. But Allah give as a wage to him a perfection. Now people calling him doctor, okay? And then the pleasure, he has a smile on his face. And also this effulgence, I mean, like, I think a sense of, let's say, accomplishing something and going into the ladders of his career development. So all of these things, although it's suffering, and from a part of the video is like a drama, but at the end, like, you see it, oh, wow, this is a great wage, this is a great salary Allah is giving to him. And then, I mean, now the feeling he has, he will say, and people say, oh, well deserved, okay, you have done it great, and things like that. It's just came to my mind that if you have a passion, no matter what happens on the road, inshallah, you can climb these ladders, and then you are manifesting one of the names of the Allah, inshallah, right?
Inshallah. Thank you, Mustafa, for sharing this example. Yeah, great. We have lost 10 to 12 minutes, so I think it's good time to go to the next paragraph. So let me take from here. So we read that God forbid, beings have no rights before the necessarily existent one, wajib al-wujud, nor can they claim them. What falls to them is by offering thanks and praise to carry out what is required by the degree of existence he has given them. What falls to them is by offering thanks and praise to carry out what is required by the degree of existence he has given to them. For the degrees of existence that are given are occurrences, and each requires a cause. Degrees that are not given are possibilities, and possibilities are non-existent as well as being infinite. As for instances of non-existence, they do not require a cause. For example, minerals cannot say, why weren't we plants? They cannot complain. What falls to them is to offer thanks to their creator for having been given mineral existence. And plants may not complain, asking why they were not animals. What is due to them is to offer thanks for they have received life as well as existence. As for animals, they cannot complain that they are not humans. What is incumbent on them, since they have been given the precious substance of spirits in addition to life and existence, is to offer thanks and so on. Colin Hocam, this part.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
It's very poetic as well, I feel
It's
like.
beautiful, but also this is what actually made me so annoyed and maybe a bit angry as well. When I read this like 40 years ago, when I knew nothing really very much about Risale, when I was beginning to read it, and I read like things like beings have no rights before the necessarily existent one, nor can they claim them. This is very severe when
Nefs doesn't like this statement, isn't it?
Not at all, not at all. Especially when you've been brought up in an environment and in a society which, of course, is all about rights.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So, but then, of course, we're talking here about rights with respect to our Creator. Interpersonal rights on a social level is a different issue. And then again, those rights are given. They're not they're not there by they're not innate. They are given to us. So yes, it's absolutely correct what he's saying, and he goes on to explain it so beautifully. And there's so many different aspects that you could pick up on here. I mean, there's the ontological issue. There's philosophical issues that can be discussed here. The notion of non-existence and the non-existence of non-existence. And how can we understand non-existence when it doesn't exist? How does Allah make us understand what non-existence is in the abstract sense when there is no such thing as non-existence?
Right.
There's so much here, so much. And
Right.
as you said, it's beautifully written as well.
And I think at the core, he puts this offering thanks and praise, like all creatures' stance should be paying thanks. This is what the duty or what my nature requires, offering thanks. It's not questioning why I don't have this and that. My point should be, thanking with what I have. And also, I think this brings me to the edge of being muqtasid, as you say, because most likely whatever I'm given is kind of whatever I'm in need of, and
Yes,
maybe
yes.
a little bit more because it takes care of my potential as well. Then that means I'm already abundant of resources. Why do I need more? I mean, it should be clear to me in the first place.
I think he's talking also about the chain of, again, the great chain of being, because he runs up the pyramid, doesn't he, or the tree, if you wish, starting with the inanimate, then the plant world, then the animal world, and then human beings. A stone never thinks, why am I not a tree? And a tree never thinks, why am I not a butterfly? And a butterfly never thinks, why am I not a human being? It's only human beings who think, why am I not? Because we have something that they don't. And again, this is what he's talking about here. They can't complain because they're not aware of non-existence. They're not aware of it. Only humans are aware of non-existence and more and less and bigger and smaller. Nothing else is aware. Maybe animals to a certain extent, but only instinctively, rather. So this is so rich,
Right.
what you've read for us this evening. And the way you framed this has been excellent as well. You're giving us the cues to ask the right questions. It's always very helpful.
Thank you, Colin Hocam. I saw Fatih's messages. I want to read them. The first one, it was actually on the previous topic, different needs of trees and different needs of humans on the Ehadi perspective. Some people need more Jalali, others need Jamali treatment. Also, we sometimes need more Jalali and sometimes more Jamali treatment. Yeah, it's excellent connection with our nature requiring this type of treatment, Jalali and Jamali. And Fatih's last comment, however, they have a desire to have the life level of an upper one. This dua is always accepted because they enter the body of such and its level of life is enhanced. Yeah, this is in relation to the very last paragraph we just read. Mustafa, we have 5 minutes. We can take your opinion on this part.
Also, like from the perspective of Qadr, the pen of divine degree, if Allah is destined a creation to be in the state of plant, you should look things like, not like what you don't have, but what you have extra compared to others, like let's say the rocks or stone. It's a higher elevation to be thankful, because the purpose of the creation is to thank, do shukr and the praising of Allah. I think Ustad is channeling us here also to offer thanks and the praise as the whole creation. Because the thing is, when we say always look up with the things which we cannot change it, there will be no end. There is like a lot of possibilities which can happen to us to be more rich, to have this one, that one. But Allah gave you at this stage this one. But look, people who doesn't have anything. If you have, let's say, one eye, look the people who doesn't have any eyes. So those things will bring the joy and also the fruit of our creation, like praising Allah, inshallah. So for that reason, I think the degree which Allah is not giving to us, we can do as the brother Fatih said, asking in our duas. But if it's not happening, that enhancement, I think still always our state should be the shukr, because Allah can also elevate us if He wishes, right?
Yeah, this is, as you all mentioned, this is a very rich text, and your point of relativism here is very important as well. We should be looking down, not up, to be in the state of being thankful. That's an amazing argument here. Also, I want to ask about this logic here, like degrees of existence that are given are occurrences, and each requires a cause, while degrees not given are possibilities and their non-existence as well as being infinite. Mustafa, do you want to have a couple of words on this logic, or how do you find this logical?
Okay.
Mustafa? Yeah.
The degrees that are not given are possibilities, and the possibilities are non-existence as well as being infinite. I mean,
especially maybe the first part.
Yeah.
We justify this, but just to elaborate, I mean, I'm given something, like somebody gives me flower. It requires a cause, like I need to thank for this flower. But if I say, why did this person give me flower instead of a car, then that's a possibility. I mean, but here it's a logical statement, and I find it valuable. How would you elaborate a little bit, maybe more?
I mean, as you said, like there are hundreds of things which have been given to you. Like there is a possibility of, as you said, like giving a car or a big house and this and that. But it requires a kind of a cause, which is like all of these possibilities. If it's not existing and you don't see the cause, I think it becomes like a dilemma. It's a conflict. I mean, we cannot maybe go much to that direction. I don't know. This is what I feel like, kind of so many possibilities, and then you don't see the cause why this one is being given to me. So for that reason, I mean, the non-existence thing which is not given to you, there is no cause for it. So why kind of we are pushing for that? I don't know if I phrase it correctly. It's a little bit also difficult kind of a phrase for me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take next week from this statement, because also I want to question the cause here, or why cause is important at all. Maybe we can start questioning from there and move forwards if you agree. Looks like we're out of time, and I want to read Mehmet Su's comment. My existence value has something to do with being subject to reflection of esmas and attributes. If so, then the purpose is fulfilled, and it doesn't matter what role I play, because Alhamdulillah, I exist. Well said. I can be subject to Jamali name's reflection. If that's the case, then there is only one thing left, which is thanks to God. Amin. Colin Hocam, do you want to finish with a prayer as a tradition?
I'll let you do that, because I spoke quite a lot as well.
Okay, then I will pass to Mustafa. I'm not good at this.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة.
Thank you everyone for joining. See you next week, inshallah.